Welcome to Fractured Chaos.
They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. I like mine slow, hot, and burning deep enough to leave scars that never fade. Before I begin my story, drop a comment to let me know where you're watching from, and give this video a like to show your support. I know this story is going to resonate with so many of you who've been wronged the same way. Now let me tell you all what happened. You ever been cheated on so bad that your soul just leaves your body? That moment when everything you thought was real shatters into a million jagged pieces? That was me, sitting on my bed at 3 a.m. scrolling through message after message, video after disgusting video. My hands trembled as I watched the man I had given 3 years of my life to pressing another woman against a wall, his hands everywhere they shouldn't be. Trey. The man who had looked into my eyes just that morning and told me I was his everything. The man who had promised me forever. Had his tongue down another woman's throat while I was at home making dinner for him, waiting for him, loving him. And not just once, not twice, but dozens of times with different women, different names, same damn lies. The timestamps on the videos went back months, the messages even longer. All while he was telling me he was working late. All while he was telling me I was paranoid for questioning him. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, a strange calm washing over me like ice water in my veins. Because if there's one thing I've learned in this world, it's that men like Trey don't feel guilt. They don't feel shame. They only feel loss. And I was about to make him lose in a way that would haunt him for the rest of his life. I didn't key his car. I didn't trash his apartment. I didn't post the videos online for the world to see. No, baby. I went for something deeper. I went for his father. See, Trey idolized his father in a way that bordered on obsession. Trevor Blackwood was everything Trey wished he could be but never had the discipline to become. Wealthy, respected, powerful, and most importantly, the one thing Trey could never quite earn no matter how hard he tried, his father's complete approval. The next morning, I kissed Trey goodbye like nothing was wrong. Smiled when he told me he'd be working late again and promised to wait up for him. I even packed his favorite lunch, my fingers steady as I cut his sandwich into perfect triangles the way he liked. And then I called Trevor Blackwood, 50 years old, steel gray at the temples of otherwise jet black hair, shoulders broad from decades of discipline rather than occasional gym visits. Wealthy not from inheritance, but from calculated risks and ruthless business acumen. The kind of man who walks into a room and owns it without saying a word. He was nothing like his son. Where Trey was reckless and cocky, Trevor was controlled, reserved, a man who knew his worth. And I knew, from the way he had always looked at me. Just a little too long, just a little too intensely when Trey wasn't watching. That slight, almost imperceptible tightening of his jaw when I wore that red dress to last year's Christmas party. The way his voice dropped half an octave whenever he spoke directly to me. I knew Trevor Blackwood wasn't immune to my charm, so I played the perfect card. I told him I needed help, that I was looking to start a business and needed guidance from someone as successful as him, someone I trusted. Trevor, being the generous, strong, capable man that he is, invited me to dinner, just the two of us, to discuss my business plan. And that was my opening move. I showed up to that 5-star restaurant wearing red, not the innocent, cherry red of a summer dress. No. This was deep, dark crimson, the color of sin and secrets, a fitted silk dress that hugged every curve God gave me, with a slit that climbed my thigh with each step. Heels that made my legs look endless, hair falling in loose waves past my shoulders, the way I'd worn it when I'd caught him staring at the pool last summer. When Trevor saw me step out of the taxi, his entire body tensed. His eyes, dark, deep, hungry, scanned me from head to toe, his jaw tightening in that familiar way. But this time, there was no looking away, no pretending. I smiled. Let my fingers trail along his arm as he pulled out my chair. Let my perfume, Jasmine and something darker, more primal, linger between us as I leaned in to speak. And when our glasses clinked together in a toast, I held his gaze just a little too long. "To new beginnings," I said, my voice soft, intimate in the dimly lit space between us. His eyes never left mine as he took his first sip. To new beginnings. Dinner was intoxicating. He asked about my business ideas, and I pretended to be the wide-eyed, ambitious young woman who needed his wisdom. But underneath every innocent question, every thoughtful response, ran a current so charged it seemed to crackle in the air between us. I watched the way his hands moved, the veins in his forearms flexing as he gripped his glass, the subtle way his fingers tapped the table when he was deep in thought. Hands so different from his son's, stronger, more assured, marked with the evidence of a life fully lived. I let my knee brush against his under the table. Accidental, at first. But when he didn't move away, neither did I. By the time dessert arrived, Trevor was shifting in his seat, trying to hide the way his body was reacting to me. And I played it coy. Let him sit in that tension, in that want. Then, as he walked me to my car, I let my fingers trail down his chest. Slow, deliberate. He inhaled sharply, his entire frame stiffening. "I'd love to do this again," I whispered, letting my breath warm his ear. Then, right before slipping into my car, I turned back and said, "But let's keep it our little secret." And just like that, he was hooked. Over the next few weeks, I played the perfect game. A text here, a late-night call there. Photos that seemed innocent enough but left just enough to the imagination. Coffee meetings where I'd lean in just close enough for him to smell my perfume, to feel the heat radiating off my skin. Trevor tried to resist. I could feel it in the way he would pause before responding to my texts, in the measured way he spoke to me. The gentleman in him fighting what the man in him wanted. But resistance is just another form of foreplay. Every time he'd pull back, I'd let him. And then, I'd find a reason to pull him right back in. A business question that couldn't wait. A dinner that ran late, forcing him to drive me home. Each encounter was a carefully choreographed dance of tension and release, of almost and not yet. I was playing the long game, and Trevor? He was losing with every passing day. Meanwhile, Trey continued his charade. Coming home late, phone always face down, the scent of strange perfume barely masked by his too strong cologne. But now, I didn't care. Each betrayal just fueled my resolve. Then, one night, Trey left town for a boys' trip, a weekend in Vegas that I knew would be filled with all the things he thought I didn't know about. And I showed up at Trevor's penthouse, wearing nothing but an oversized coat and black lace lingerie underneath, the kind you don't buy unless you want someone to see it. When he opened the door, his breath hitched, his grip on the handle tightened, his knuckles going white. "Tanya." His voice was rough, low, like gravel wrapped in velvet. "What are you doing here?" I stepped inside, uninvited but not unwanted, closing the door behind me, letting the coat slip off one shoulder, revealing smooth, bare skin and the thin black strap of something that promised so much more. "I couldn't stop thinking about you." That was all it took. 1 second, his hands were clenched at his sides, fighting the urge. The next, he had me pinned against the door, his mouth hot and hungry on my neck, his hands gripping my waist, pulling me against the hard lines of his body. "You have no idea what you're doing to me," he groaned against my skin. I arched into him, my lips brushing his ear. "Then show me." And God, did he show me? That night, I didn't just sleep with my boyfriend's father. I owned him. I let him worship me, devour me, claim me in a way no man ever had. His hands, those powerful hands that had built empires, trembled as they traced every inch of my body. His mouth, that mouth that commanded boardrooms, whispered my name like a prayer against my skin. And when we finally collapsed against his silk sheets, his chest rising and falling beneath me, I knew there was no turning back. Trevor Blackwood was mine now. Weeks turned into months. What started as a calculated move of revenge evolved into something more complex, more intoxicating. Trevor wasn't just Trey's father anymore. He wasn't just a means to an end. He was a man who made me feel things I had never felt before. Desired, valued, seen. Our meetings became more frequent, more desperate. Secret rendezvous in his office, his private car, hotels across the city where nobody knew our names. The risk only made it sweeter, the forbidden nature of our affair adding a layer of thrill that was addictive. All while I played the perfect girlfriend to Trey. Smiling, supportive, understanding when he'd come home smelling of another woman's perfume. I'd kiss him goodbye in the morning, then text Trevor the moment the door closed behind him. And Trevor? He showed me a world I'd only glimpsed before. Private jets to weekend getaways. Jewelry that I'd have to hide the moment I returned to the apartment I shared with Trey. Experiences that made me realize just how small my life had been before, but it wasn't just the luxury. It was the way Trevor looked at me, like I was the most fascinating creature he'd ever encountered. The way he'd listen, really listen, when I spoke. The way he'd challenge my thoughts, push me to be more, to want more. "You're wasted on him," he told me one night, as we lay tangled in the sheets of a suite overlooking Central Park. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my bare back, his voice thoughtful. "You know that, don't you?" I didn't answer, not with words. Instead, I showed him just how much I agreed. The guilt came in waves. Not for betraying Trey. He had forfeited any right to my loyalty the moment he betrayed me. But for falling for Trevor in a way I hadn't planned. For letting my perfect revenge become tangled with genuine feelings. Then one rain-soaked Tuesday, everything changed. I was at Trevor's penthouse, wearing nothing but his shirt, making coffee in his kitchen, when my phone buzzed. A text from Trey. "We need to talk, I know." My heart stopped. My hands froze around the mug. "Know what? About Trevor? About us?" Impossible. We had been so careful. I called Trey immediately, forcing my voice to remain calm. "Hey babe, what's up?" "I found the earring," he said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "In my car, the diamond one I never bought you." Relief flooded through me. Not about us. About one of his other women. An earring left behind by some other fool he was stringing along. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, letting just the right amount of confusion color my tone. "I haven't been in your car in weeks." "Bullshit," he snapped. "You think I'm stupid? You think I don't know you're seeing someone else?" The irony was almost laughable. Almost. "Trey," I said, my voice steady. "I think you're confused. Maybe you should think about whose earring that really is before you start throwing accusations." Silence, then a bitter laugh. "You know what? Forget it. We'll talk when I get home." He hung up. And I stood there, in Trevor's kitchen, wearing Trevor's shirt, realizing that my carefully constructed double life was starting to crack at the seams. When I told Trevor what happened, his reaction surprised me. He didn't panic, didn't suggest we cool things off. Instead, he placed his hands on either side of my face, his eyes intense, determined. "Move in with me," he said. Not a question, a statement. "What?" "Leave him, move in with me, today, now." "Trevor, I can't just—" "You can," he interrupted. "You should. He doesn't deserve you. He never did. And I'm tired of sharing you." I stared at him, my heart pounding. This wasn't the plan. The plan was to make Trey suffer, to make him watch me walk away, not to fall in love with his father. But looking into Trevor's eyes, I realized something. The plan had changed. That afternoon, I went back to the apartment I shared with Trey, packed my things while he was still at work, left my key on the counter. And just like that, I wasn't just sneaking around with Trevor. I was living with him. We kept our relationship private for a while. Not out of shame, but out of strategy. Trevor wanted to handle things his way, especially when it came to telling Trey. "He's still my son," he told me one night, his voice heavy with a complicated mix of emotions. As much as he's disappointed me, as much as he never deserved you, I need to be the one to tell him." I agreed. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. 3 weeks after I moved in with Trevor, we ran into Trey at a restaurant. A high-end place where Trevor was known, respected, where the maitre d' greeted him by name and led us to his usual table without needing a reservation. We didn't see Trey at first. We were too wrapped up in each other, in the comfortable intimacy we'd developed. Trevor's hand on the small of my back, my fingers laced with his as we followed the maitre d' to our table. And then, there he was, sitting with some blonde I'd never seen before, his back to us but turning at just the wrong moment. Our eyes locked across the crowded restaurant, and I watched as recognition, confusion, and then fury washed over his face in rapid succession. He was up and moving toward us before I could even blink. "What the fuck is this?" he demanded, his voice too loud for the elegant setting. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Trevor's hand tightened on mine, but his voice remained perfectly controlled. "Trey, lower your voice." "Lower my—" Trey cut himself off, disbelief etched into every line of his face as he looked between us. "Are you fucking kidding me? My girlfriend? My fucking girlfriend, Dad?" "Ex-girlfriend," I corrected, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "I left you 3 weeks ago, or didn't you notice?" Trey's laugh was ugly, bitter. "So that's where you went, to him." He turned to his father, his voice dripping with venom. "Always have to have what's mine, don't you? Always have to prove you're better." Trevor's expression hardened. "This isn't the place for this conversation." "No? Then where is? Your bed? The one you're fucking my girlfriend in?" Security was moving toward us now, alerted by the escalating scene. Trevor held up a hand, stopping them with the natural authority he commanded. "My office, tomorrow, 10 a.m. His voice left no room for argument, even from his furious son. "We'll discuss this like adults." Trey's jaw worked, his fists clenched at his sides. For a moment, I thought he might throw a punch right there in the middle of the restaurant. Instead, he leaned in, his voice low but razor sharp. "You think this makes you a man? Taking my leftovers? Pathetic." I felt Trevor tense beside me, saw something dangerous flash in his eyes. But before he could respond, I stepped forward, my voice calm but carrying. "Leftovers? Is that what I was to you?" I smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. "Funny. That's not what you called me when you were begging me to stay, when you were promising you'd change." I tilted my head, letting my gaze drift deliberately to the confused blonde still sitting at his table. "But then, we both know how good you are at keeping promises, don't we?" Trey's face contorted with rage. "You bitch!" "That's enough." Trevor's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Tomorrow, my office, or don't bother coming around again at all." Security had reached us now, hovering uncertainly at the edge of our confrontation. "Everything all right here, Mr. Blackwood?" the larger of the two asked. Trevor nodded, his eyes never leaving his son's face. My son was just leaving. The implied command in those words was unmistakable. Trey held his father's gaze for one more defiant moment before turning on his heel and stalking back to his table. We watched as he threw money down, grabbed his confused date by the arm, and stormed out. The rest of our dinner passed in tense silence. The confrontation I had been planning for, dreaming of, had happened, but nothing about it felt like victory. That night, lying in Trevor's arms, I couldn't sleep. The look on Trey's face kept replaying in my mind. Not the anger. I had expected that. It was the flash of genuine hurt behind it that unsettled me. "Are you having second thoughts?" Trevor asked quietly, his fingers tracing soothing patterns on my bare shoulder. I turned to look at him, at this man who had become so much more than a means to an end. "No," I said truthfully, "but I am wondering where this ends." Trevor pulled me closer, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "It ends with us," he said simply. "The rest is just noise." But we both knew it wouldn't be that simple. Not when the noise was his only son. The next morning, we walked into Trevor's office together, a united front. Me in a crisp white blouse and pencil skirt that whispered power rather than screamed sex. Trevor in the tailored charcoal suit that made him look every inch the titan of industry he was. His assistant's eyes widened slightly when she saw us together, but she recovered quickly. Professional, discreet. Exactly why Trevor paid her an obscene salary. "Your son is already waiting in your office, Mr. Blackwood," she informed us. Trevor nodded, his hand finding the small of my back as he guided me forward. "Are you ready for this?" he asked quietly. I smiled up at him, steadier than I felt. I've been ready since the moment I found those messages. Trey was standing at the window when we entered, his back to the door, his posture rigid with tension. He turned at the sound of the door closing, his eyes immediately finding mine before shifting to his father's hand, still resting possessively on my back. "So it's true," he said flatly. "You're really doing this." Trevor moved to sit behind his massive desk, the position of power in the room. I took the chair to his right, crossing my legs, feeling Trey's eyes track the movement before jerking away. "Sit down, Trey," Trevor said, gesturing to the chair opposite. "I'll stand." Trevor sighed. Always the rebel, even when it serves no purpose. Trey's jaw tightened. "Cut the lecture. Just tell me what the fuck is going on." "Language," Trevor reprimanded automatically, the father despite everything. "And I think it's fairly obvious what's going on. Tanya and I are together." "Together," Trey repeated, the word dripping with disgust. "She was my girlfriend, for 3 years. And during those 3 years," I cut in, my voice cool, "you cheated on me with, what was the final count? 12 different women? That I know of." Trey had the audacity to look surprised. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone, opened the album I'd created, slid it across the desk toward him. "Don't insult my intelligence on top of everything else." He picked up the phone, his face draining of color as he scrolled through image after image, message after message. Evidence I'd been collecting for months before I ever called Trevor. When he looked up, the cockiness was gone, replaced by something uglier, rawer. "So this is what? Revenge?" he spat. "Fucking my father to get back at me?" "It started that way," I admitted, feeling Trevor tense beside me at my candor. "I wanted to hurt you the way you hurt me. I wanted you to feel what it's like to be betrayed by someone you trust." Trey's laugh was hollow. "Congratulations. Mission accomplished." "But," I continued, my voice softening as I reached for Trevor's hand, "it became something else, something real." Trevor's fingers tightened around mine, a silent support I hadn't known I needed until that moment. "Bullshit," Trey snarled. "You're lying to yourself, to him. This is sick. It's..." "Enough," Trevor cut in, his voice sharp. "You don't get to stand there after everything you've done and claim any moral high ground. You had someone remarkable, and you threw her away. For what? For meaningless flings that you can't even remember now?" Trey's face contorted with a complex mix of emotions. Anger, shame, defiance. "So this is my punishment? You take her? Your own son's girlfriend?" "Ex-girlfriend," I corrected again. "And this isn't about you, Trey. Not anymore." "Then what's it about?" he demanded. "Love?" He spat the word like it was poison. "You expect me to believe that?" Trevor stood then, the movement sudden enough to make Trey take an instinctive step back. "I don't particularly care what you believe," Trevor said, his voice quiet but hard as steel. "But I do expect you to accept it. Tanya and I are together. That isn't going to change because you throw a tantrum." "And what about Mom?" Trey demanded. "Does she know you're sleeping with a woman half your age? A woman who was with your son?" A flicker of something, guilt, perhaps, crossed Trevor's face. "Your mother and I have been separated for 5 years, Trey. Legally, if not publicly. She knows." This clearly was news to Trey. He blinked, momentarily thrown. "What?" "We agreed to keep it private for the sake of the company image. For your sake, too." Trevor sighed, some of the hardness leaving his expression. I didn't want to disrupt your life any more than necessary. Trey shook his head, disbelief warring with anger. So what now? You two ride off into the sunset? Play happy families? You can't be serious. Actually, Trevor said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small velvet box. I'm very serious. My heart stuttered in my chest. This wasn't part of the plan. We hadn't discussed this. But as Trevor turned to me, his eyes softening in a way I'd only seen in our most private moments, I realized this had stopped being about the plan a long time ago. I was going to wait, he said, his voice intimate despite our audience. Do this properly, but since we're clearing the air... He opened the box, revealing a diamond that caught the light from the window, scattering prisms across his desk. Tanya, will you marry me? Time seemed to stop. Trey's face, frozen in shock. Trevor's eyes, warm and certain. The ring, glittering with promises I had never dared to dream of. And me, standing at a crossroads I hadn't seen coming. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was a future, a choice. Yes, I whispered, feeling tears well up, real unexpected tears. Yes, I will. Trevor's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds as he slid the ring onto my finger. And when he kissed me, right there in front of his son, it felt like sealing a pact. A new beginning. Trey made a sound, half laugh, half sob, that forced us apart. You're insane, he said, but the fight had drained from his voice, replaced by something closer to defeat. Both of you. No, I said, standing to face him properly, the weight of the ring already feeling natural on my finger. We're just done living by other people's rules, done pretending to be less than what we are to make others comfortable. I took a step toward him, watched him flinch. You never saw me, Trey. Not really. You saw a convenience, a trophy, something to use when it suited you and ignore when it didn't. I gestured to the phone, still in his hand, the evidence of his betrayals still displayed on the screen. Did you ever think about how those would make me feel? Did you ever once consider that I might find out? Or did you just assume I was too stupid, too desperate, too in love with you to notice? Trey had no answer, just the stubborn jut of his jaw, the wounded pride in his eyes. That's what I thought, I said softly. You never respected me enough to even hide your tracks properly. I turned back to Trevor, who was watching me with a mix of pride and something deeper, more reverent. We're done here, I told him, taking his hand. Trevor nodded, then looked at his son one last time. This doesn't have to be the end, Trey. You're still my son, still family. But you need to accept that this is happening, that Tanya and I are going to be together. Trey's laugh was bitter, broken. Family, right. He tossed my phone onto the desk, the clatter harsh in the tense silence. You two deserve each other. And with that, he was gone, the door slamming behind him with enough force to rattle the framed degrees on the wall. Trevor pulled me close, his arms secure around me as I trembled with the aftershocks of adrenaline, of emotions too complex to name. Are you okay? He murmured against my hair. I nodded, then pulled back to look at him properly. Did you mean it? The proposal? His eyes crinkled at the corners, warmth and humor chasing away the shadows of the confrontation. I've had that ring for weeks, been carrying it everywhere, waiting for the right moment. He brushed a strand of hair from my face, his touch gentle. Not exactly how I planned to ask, but... It was perfect, I assured him, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. Absolutely perfect. And standing there in the aftermath of a storm 3 years in the making, I realized this wasn't just revenge anymore. This was love. Then, one night, Trevor decided it was time to tell everyone, to make our engagement official in a way that would leave no room for gossip, for speculation. A clean break from the shadows into the light. A family dinner. Everyone gathered at the Blackwood estate, Trey conspicuously absent. Trevor's ex-wife, Angela, poised and elegant despite the whispers that must have reached her. Extended relatives, business associates, friends of the family, and me. On Trevor's arm, wearing a dress as white as my intentions had once been black. The evening progressed with the practiced smoothness of wealth. Cocktails on the terrace, dinner served by silent staff, conversation that danced skillfully around the elephant in the room, the young woman at Trevor's side, the empty seat where his son should have been. And right before dessert, Trevor cleared his throat, placing a hand over mine where it rested on the table. "I have an announcement to make." The table fell silent. Angela's perfect eyebrows arched slightly. Trevor's sister leaned forward, curiosity bright in eyes so like his own. And then, a late arrival. The dining room doors opening to reveal Trey, disheveled, eyes reddened from what could have been lack of sleep or something stronger. "Sorry I'm late," he drawled, dropping into his seat with deliberate carelessness. "Wouldn't miss this for the world." Trevor's jaw tightened, but he nodded at his son, an acknowledgement, if not a welcome. "As I was saying," he continued, his voice steady, "I have an announcement to make." Trey, clueless, or pretending to be, leaned back in his chair. "What's up, Pops?" Trevor smiled, genuine, beaming. "Tanya and I are getting married." The silence that followed was absolute, a vacuum where sound should have been. Angela's champagne glass paused halfway to her lips, Trevor's sister's mouth forming a perfect O of surprise. And Trey's entire body went rigid, his face drained of color. His mouth opened, but no words came out. And me? I just smiled, slow, wicked, triumphant, because this was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment he finally felt the loss, silence, thick, unbearable. Trey's jaw clenched so tight I thought it might snap. His hands curled into fists against the pristine tablecloth. And then, he laughed. A bitter, humorless sound that cut through the silence like a knife. "You're joking." I tilted my head, smiled. "No, baby, we're not." The look in his eyes? Priceless. The way his gaze dropped to the ring on my finger. The ring that cost more than everything he owned combined. The way his throat worked as he swallowed whatever words were trying to claw their way out. Angela was the first to recover, years of social training kicking in as she raised her glass. "Well," she said, her voice only slightly strained, "this is unexpected, but congratulations to you both." Others murmured their agreement, glasses raising in a toast that felt more obligatory than celebratory, but their eyes, curious, judgmental, scandalized, told the real story. Trevor squeezed my hand, his touch grounding me as the waves of reaction washed around us. Proud, unapologetic. A man who had made his choice and would stand by it, consequences be damned. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of forced conversation and subtle glances. Trey drank too much, said too little. And when dessert was finally cleared away, he cornered me in the hallway outside the powder room. "You think you've won?" he said, his voice low, slurred with expensive scotch. "You think this makes you special?" I looked at him, really looked at him. The man I had once thought I loved. The boy playing at being a man, drunk and bitter and so small in the shadow of his father. "This was never a competition, Trey," I said, my voice gentle in a way that I knew would cut deeper than anger. "But if it was, yes, I won the moment I walked away from you." He stepped closer, crowding me against the wall, his breath hot with alcohol. "He'll get bored of you. They all do. And then what?" I laughed, genuinely laughed, at the absurdity of it. "Is that what you tell yourself? That the women leave because they're bored, not because you're a cheating, lying excuse for a partner?" His eyes narrowed, his hand coming up to grip my arm just a little too tight. "You have no idea what you've started. Let go of me," I said quietly. "Now." "Everything all right here?" Trevor's voice, calm but with an edge of steel, cut through the tension. Trey dropped my arm immediately, taking an unsteady step back. "Just congratulating the happy couple," he muttered. Trevor's eyes flicked to me, a silent question. I nodded. I'm fine. And watched as some of the tension left his shoulders. I think it's time for you to go home, son, Trevor said, not unkindly. Sleep it off. Trey looked between us, something desperate and broken in his eyes, before pushing past his father and disappearing down the hall. Trevor was at my side in an instant, his fingers gentle as they traced my arm where Trey had gripped it. Did he hurt you? I shook my head. No, just his pride talking. Trevor's expression darkened. That's no excuse. No, I agreed. It's not, but he's hurting. Because of what we did, Trevor acknowledged, a shadow of regret crossing his face. I placed my hand on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath my palm. Because of what he did first, I corrected gently. We didn't start this, Trevor. We just refused to be victims in his story. He covered my hand with his own, bringing it to his lips. When did you get so wise? I smiled, leaning into his warmth. Somewhere between revenge and falling in love with you. The party continued around us, but we stayed there in that quiet hallway, wrapped in each other and the certainty of our choice. The path behind us was messy, complicated, strewn with the wreckage of what had come before. But the path ahead, that was ours to define. You ever see a man break? I mean truly break. Mentally, emotionally, to the point where his whole world shatters in real time? Because I did. It was the moment Trevor laced his fingers with mine at that dinner table, announced our engagement, and placed a diamond the size of my revenge-fueled heart on my finger. Trey sat there, frozen, his knuckles white against the table, his mouth opening and closing like a man drowning, reaching for words that wouldn't come. His mother? Oh, she gasped, clutching her pearls, as if she hadn't spent years pretending not to see the way her son was screwing around behind my back. But Trevor? He just smiled, proud, confident, like a man who had won the ultimate prize. And me? I squeezed his hand, leaned into his warmth, and watched as the life drained from Trey's eyes. He lost me, to his own father. But baby, we were just getting started. Trey stormed out of that dinner like a man possessed. He called. I didn't answer. He texted. I left him on read. Then, he showed up. I was in Trevor's penthouse, sipping wine, draped in silk. The kind of silk that felt expensive against my skin, the kind only a real man could afford. When the pounding on the door started, Trevor went to answer, but I stopped him. Let me handle this, I murmured, placing my hand on his chest. I opened the door to find Trey standing there, his hair wild, his shirt wrinkled, desperation written all over him. Are you out of your mind? His voice cracked, his body tense like he was fighting the urge to shake me. What the hell are you doing with my father? I tilted my head, let a slow smirk spread across my lips, loving him the way you never could. The way his face dropped? Oh, it was delicious. This is insane, he hissed, lowering his voice but none of the intensity. You're doing this to hurt me. That's all this is. I leaned against the doorframe, blocking his view into the penthouse, into the life I now shared with Trevor. Not everything is about you, Trey. That might be the hardest lesson you've ever had to learn. I inspected my manicure, the one Trevor had paid for at that exclusive spa last weekend. Though I will admit, watching you squirm has been satisfying. His eyes darkened. So you admit it, this is revenge. It started as revenge, I corrected. Now it's simply my life, the life I deserve, with a man who knows how to be faithful. Trey laughed, bitter and sharp. Faithful? You think he's faithful? You think you're special? Baby, you're not the first young thing he's brought home. I felt a flicker of something, doubt perhaps, before I crushed it. Careful, Trey. Your jealousy is showing. Ask him about Vanessa, he continued, a cruel smile playing at his lips. Ask him about what happened to his assistant before Margot, the one who suddenly needed to relocate after their trip to Tokyo. I kept my face impassive, even as his words tried to burrow under my skin. Are you done? He's using you, Trey pressed, stepping closer. Just like I did. except he's better at hiding it. That's enough. Trevor's voice came from behind me, firm and cold. He moved to stand beside me, a united front. You've said your piece, now leave. Trey's eyes flicked between us, a desperate calculation happening behind them. Did you tell her, Dad, about all the others? Or does she think she's special? The only thing special here, Trevor said evenly, is how thoroughly you've managed to destroy every relationship in your life. First your mother, then Tanya, now me. Trey flinched as if struck. So that's it? You choose her over your own son? I'm choosing happiness, Trevor replied, something you wouldn't recognize if it slapped you in the face. Trey wasn't done, not even close. See? I knew him. Knew his temper. Knew he wouldn't take this loss quietly. The next week, Trevor and I attended a gala. Hand in hand, all eyes on us, cameras flashing, whispers spreading like wildfire. I wore black, not the innocent black of a cocktail dress. This was midnight black, seductive, powerful. A gown that clung to every curve before pooling at my feet, with a neckline that dipped just low enough to make Trevor's eyes darken when he first saw me. And in the middle of all that luxury, that power, I felt a familiar gaze burning into me. Trey, standing across the room, his jaw tight, his drink clutched like it was the only thing keeping him from snapping. I leaned into Trevor, whispered something in his ear just to watch Trey's rage flicker in his eyes. And then, I sent him a text right there in that ballroom. Jealousy looks good on you. His reply came seconds later. You have no idea what you've started. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't over. Trey wasn't just hurt. He was furious. And furious men? They do stupid things. 3 days later, the photos leaked. Not of me and Trevor. We had been careful, discreet until the engagement announcement. No, these were photos of Trey. Compromising, explicit photos with multiple women. Dates on them spanning the entire time we were together. They appeared first on a gossip blog, then spread like wildfire across social media. The playboy son of business mogul Trevor Blackwood, exposed in all his unfaithful glory. The company's stock took a minor hit. Trevor's PR team went into overdrive. And Trey was convinced I was behind it. You vindictive bitch, he snarled when he cornered me outside a restaurant where I'd been having lunch with Trevor's sister. You think this is funny? Ruining my life? I blinked, genuinely confused. What are you talking about? The photos, he spat. Don't play innocent. This has your fingerprints all over it. Understanding dawned, followed quickly by a strange sort of pity. I didn't leak those photos, Trey. He scoffed. Right. They just magically appeared the week after you and Dad went public? I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Think about it. Why would I want those photos public? They're humiliating for me too. They show that I stayed with a cheater for years, that I wasn't enough to keep you faithful. I shook my head. I didn't do this. Doubt flickered in his eyes, quickly replaced by stubborn anger. Then who did? I shrugged. Maybe one of your many conquests got tired of being your dirty secret. Maybe one of your friends got jealous of your lifestyle. Hell, maybe you pissed off the wrong person at a bar. I adjusted my purse on my shoulder. But it wasn't me, and it wasn't Trevor. He studied my face, searching for deception and finding none. This isn't over, you know, between us. It was over the moment I found those messages, Trey. I said quietly. You just didn't know it yet. That night, back at Trevor's place, our place now, he pulled me into his lap by the fire, his hands firm, possessive. I should have taken you from him the moment I saw you, he murmured against my skin. His breath was hot, his fingers tracing slow, lazy circles on my thighs. I let out a soft laugh, leaning in, pressing my lips to his ear. Then why don't you show me what he never could? And God, did he? Trevor was everything Trey wasn't. Patient, experienced, hungry in a way that made my body melt under his touch. He took his time, savoring every gasp, every whimper, every inch of me like a man who knew exactly how to own a woman. By the time the night was over, My body was spent, trembling, wrecked in the best way possible. And as I lay there in his arms, tangled in silk and sin, I realized I wasn't just doing this for revenge anymore. I wanted him. All of him. The good, the bad, the morally ambiguous parts that had led him to seduce his son's girlfriend. But deep down, I also knew Trey wasn't done with me yet. The next morning, a package arrived. No note, no name, just a small black box left at our doorstep. Inside, a single torn photograph. Me and Trey in bed. An old picture. Years old, but the message? Crystal clear. I knew without a doubt it was Trey's way of reminding me where I started. But what he didn't realize? I wasn't the same girl in that photo anymore, so I sent him a message of my own. A picture of me wearing Trevor's shirt, wrapped up in his sheets, with one simple caption. Upgrade. Hours later, Trevor got a call. Trey, we need to talk now. Trevor agreed, but what Trey didn't know? I was coming too. The meeting was set for Trevor's office. Neutral ground in theory, though nothing about Blackwood Industries could ever truly be neutral for Trey. It was the empire he stood to inherit, the legacy he'd always lived in the shadow of. Are you sure you want to be there? Trevor asked me that morning as we dressed. He was concerned, protective in a way Trey had never been. I nodded, fastening pearl earrings, a gift from Trevor, to my ears. I'm not hiding anymore. Whatever he has to say, he can say it to both of us. The moment Trey saw me walk into that meeting, his entire body locked up. You brought her? He snapped. Trevor placed a firm hand on my back. She's my fiancée. She belongs here. That word, fiancé, was the final knife. Trey's hands clenched into fists. You don't love him. I tilted my head, lips curving into something sharp. And you never loved me. Silence, thick, suffocating. Then Trey revealed why he'd called the meeting. I'm selling my shares, he announced. All of them. Trevor's expression didn't change, but I felt him tense beside me. Trey owned 15% of Blackwood Industries, shares gifted to him on his 21st birthday. A significant stake. To whom? Trevor asked, his voice perfectly controlled. Trey's smile was all teeth. Hamilton Enterprises. Now Trevor reacted. A slight widening of the eyes, a tightening of his jaw. Hamilton Enterprises was Blackwood's main competitor. Had been for decades. You wouldn't, Trevor said quietly. Wouldn't I? Trey challenged. You've made it clear where your priorities lie. His eyes flicked to me, then back to his father. So I'm making mine clear too. This is business, Trey, Trevor warned. Not personal. Don't confuse the two. Trey laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. That's rich coming from the man sleeping with his son's ex. I don't want the company, I cut in, drawing both men's attention. If that's what you're worried about. No, Trey mocked. Not looking to be the next Mrs. Blackwood, head of the empire? I met his gaze steadily. I'm looking to be happy. Something you never cared about when we were together. Hamilton will gut the company, Trevor said, bringing the conversation back to business. You know that. People will lose jobs. Your mother's shares will be devalued. Should have thought of that before you decided to think with your dick, Trey shot back. Trevor sighed, leaning back in his chair. What do you want, Trey? Really? A flash of vulnerability crossed Trey's face before he masked it with another sneer. I want you to feel what it's like to lose something you care about. And in that moment, I saw it. The hurt little boy beneath the angry man. The child who had always felt second best to his father's empire, to his father's standards. Who had spent his life seeking validation through conquest because he'd never felt worthy of real love. You haven't lost me, Trey, Trevor said quietly. You're still my son. Am I? Trey challenged. Because it feels like I've been replaced. No one's replacing you, I said, surprising both men and myself with my gentle tone. This isn't a competition. Isn't it? Trey demanded. It's always been a competition with him. For his time, his approval, his goddamn attention. Trevor looked stricken, a rare crack in his perfect facade. Is that really how you feel? Trey's silence was answer enough. I'll buy your shares, Trevor finally said. At market value plus 20%. Trey blinked, clearly thrown by the easy capitulation. What's the catch? No catch. You want out? I'll let you out. Trevor leaned forward, his expression serious. But I want something in return. Of course you do, Trey muttered. I want you to get help, Trevor said simply. Real help. The kind your mother and I suggested after college. I glanced at Trevor, confused. This was the first I'd heard of any issues requiring help. Trey's face closed off. I don't need therapy. The drinking, the women, the constant need for validation. Trevor listed each item clinically, but I could hear the concern beneath. It's destructive, Trey. It always has been. And now it's threatening to destroy what little relationship we have left. Trey's jaw worked, emotions warring across his face. So that's your ultimatum? Get therapy or you won't buy my shares. No, Trevor corrected. I'll buy your shares regardless. I'm asking you, as your father, to consider getting help. For yourself. Not for me, not for the company. For you. The silence that followed was different from before. Less hostile. More weighted with unspoken things. Finally, Trey stood. I'll have my lawyer draw up the paperwork for the shares. He turned to leave, but paused at the door, looking back at me. Was any of it real? He asked, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. Us. Was any of it real? I swallowed against the unexpected lump in my throat. In the beginning, yes. He nodded once, a sharp jerk of his head. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For the cheating. For all of it. And then he was gone, the door closing quietly behind him. Trevor released a long breath, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. Well, that was progress, I finished for him, reaching for his hand. Maybe. That night I slipped into Trevor's arms, his fingers tracing lazy patterns along my bare skin. Do you regret it? He murmured. I smiled, pressing a slow, lingering kiss to his jaw. Not for a second, because this wasn't just revenge anymore. This was my future, my choice, my love. And Trey? He was just a chapter in a story that had taken an unexpected, beautiful turn. 6 months later, Trevor and I were married in a small ceremony on his private island. 50 guests, no cameras, just the people who truly mattered. Trey wasn't there, but the day before the wedding, a package arrived. Inside, a vintage watch that I recognized immediately. Trevor's father's watch, the one he'd always told me was his most treasured possession. The one he'd given to Trey on his 18th birthday. With it, a simple note. It belongs with the head of the family. Congratulations. It wasn't forgiveness. Not exactly. It wasn't acceptance either. But it was something. A small olive branch in a field scorched by hurt and betrayal. Trevor wore the watch at our wedding, emotion evident in his eyes when he saw it. As for me, I wore white. Pure, unblemished white. Not because I was pure, God knows I wasn't, but because I was new. Reborn from the ashes of a relationship that had nearly broken me, transformed into a woman who knew her worth. A woman who had turned revenge into love. A woman who had won. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I say it's best served exactly how you want it. And me? I wanted mine with a diamond ring and a happily ever after. So tell me, was I wrong?